I didn't tell many people what I was doing anyway, and I decided not to tell my parents. I was worried they might misunderstand my intentions. I didn't want them to think that the intensity of my search revealed an unhappiness with the life they'd given me or the way they'd raised me. I also didn't want them to think that I was wasting time. So even as it took up more and more of my life, I kept it mostly to myself. I finished work with Dad at 5 p.m., and by 5:30 I would be back at the laptop, slowly advancing along train tracks and studying the towns they led to. This went on for months. It had been over a year since I started. But I reasoned that even if it took years, or decades, it was possible to eventually sift completely through a haystack. The needle would have to show up if I persisted. Slowly, over several more months, I eliminated whole areas of India. I traced all the connections within the northeastern states without finding anything familiar, and I was confident that I could rule out Orissa too. Determined to be thorough, no matter how long it took, I started following lines farther out than my original 1,000-kilometer zone. South beyond Orissa, I eliminated Andhra Pradesh, 500 kilometers farther down the east coast. Jharkhand and Bihar didn't offer up anything promising either, and I wound up at Uttar Pradesh. I thought I'd keep going to cover most of the state. In fact, the states eventually replaced my zone boundary as a way of marking my progress. Ruling out areas state by state provided a series of goals that spurred on me. Unless I had something pressing to do for work or some other unbreakable commitment, I was on the laptop 7 nights a week. I went out with Lisa sometimes, of course, but the moment we got home, I was back on the computer. Sometimes I caught her looking at me strangely, as though she thought I might have gone a bit crazy. She'd say, "You're at it again?" But I would reply, "I have to. I'm really sorry." I think Lisa knew she simply had to let me exhaust myself of the interest. I became distant during that time, and although Lisa would have been within her rights to feel alone and in this still new relationship, we worked through it. Perhaps to some extent, sharing something so fundamental to me strengthened our connection, and that came through when we sometimes talked about what it all meant. It wasn't always easy for me to articulate, especially as I was trying to keep a lid on my expectations, trying to convince myself it was a fascinating exercise, not a deeply meaningful personal quest.